was talking to my girls, and they don't play football, but they know I like football. And I was telling them about the Harbaugh brothers, Jim and John Harbaugh, both coached in the NFL, now one's at Michigan State. And these guys are intense. And I saw an interview, and they were talking about growing up, they learned to live lives of gratitude. And their dad would say at any given time, on any given day, in any given circumstance, boys, who's got it better than we do? And no matter what was going on, they had to respond with enthusiasm. Nobody. And I thought, man, that's just so cool. So I sat my girls down, and I was like, girls, we have to live lives of gratitude. So here's the drill. I'm going to ask, who's got it better than we do? And you, with enthusiasm, will respond, nobody. Got it? Yes, good. So I asked them, girls, who's got it better than we do? And at the same time, they said, everybody. I was like, well, that was a major backfire. So it threw me off my game, and I want to make sure that I'm on my game, because you deserve to have someone speaking to you who is on their game. So let's just try it once. All right, I'm going to ask you, Mind Institute, who's got it better than we do? And your response is nobody. All right, are we clear on this? All right, here goes. Mind Institute, who's got it better than we do? Nobody. All right, thank you very much. I'll go back and tell my girls, Daddy still got it. It is a privilege to speak with you today. And it's a privilege to be here, but not just in a professional capacity, but in a personal capacity. I feel very, very connected to what you do and the lives you lead and the efforts that you're involved with. As the chief of the Office of Access and Functional Needs at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, I have probably the longest title, I think, in state government. And for a guy that comes from the private sector, I learned that that's kind of like a thing out here, that the longer the title, the better. So I think I'm winning. I wanted a longer title, and I'm told they ran out of letters. So I'm like, okay. Let me give you a brief overview, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Ready? That's it. Before I jump in to my prepared remarks, it probably is, I think, helpful if you have a better sense of my background and who I am. You see, long before the governor asked me to serve in this capacity, I received a different call from a different authority. It was a doctor. He informed us that I had muscular dystrophy. And we went in because we didn't know what that meant. And this neurologist came into a room, and I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but it's like you're there, but the doctor doesn't even see you. You know, it's very interested in his clipboard and his notes. You're almost an afterthought. And after a moment, he looked and said, your muscles are going to weaken. You're going to start to trip and fall. Your body will fail you, and you'll be in a wheelchair. You'll depend on your mother for care for the rest of your life. There's no treatment or viable options for therapy. And then he looked at my mom and said, Mrs. Taylor, I want you to recognize and accept things like high school or college would be an impossibility for your son. That he'll live with you for the rest of his life. And for your expectations, or the health of your self and him, lower your expectations. And I was 7 years old when that happened. And it's interesting because I don't remember too much from when I was really young. Certain things stand out, that was one. But what stood out was a conversation that my mother had with me next. We got home, you can imagine we were a little bummed out. And she sat me down and she said, you know, as smart as that doctor was, he's a real idiot when it comes to you. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know that you're smart, he doesn't know that you're funny, he doesn't know what a hard worker you are, and he doesn't know anything about your determination. And so yes, you will end up using a wheelchair. And yes, there will be challenges. But how far you go in life is up to you. You can choose to be bitter, or you can choose to become better. And that's up to you. And so at the age of 7, I remember making a conscious decision that I would push. I would do everything I could do within my own power and my own abilities to go as far as I could go. I was not going to watch life pass me by. I would join in, I would lead the parade, and I would be a part of things. And her words and the confidence that was instilled in me in that day have propelled me far. They changed me. I like to think that by graduating high school, by earning a bachelor's degree, by going on to get a master's in Homeland Security, by becoming a husband and a father, by doing some of the things I've done professionally, that I've proved maybe a few things. Number one, that doctor was a bonehead, right? Can we just agree on that? Number two is that a grim diagnosis does not automatically equate to a grim prognosis. We are much more than a diagnosis. And three is that perseverance and hard work and preparation and dedication lead to success. And success is defined differently by different people. Each one of us has our own measure of success, but whatever it is, perseverance, hard work, and preparation will lead to what you're going for. To be successful in life, I had to take action. I couldn't wait around and hope that success would find me. I couldn't expect that others would do it for me. And that principle applies to every facet of life. And I think about that within the context of what we're talking about today, within the context of becoming successful in the way that we preserve life itself. There are, on the medical fronts, many, many things that we do to promote our health and safety. Right, we maintain good hygiene, we go to physical therapy, we watch our diets. I won't tell you about my midnight snacks. We take our medicines. We use durable medical equipment and assistive technology. We do all these things to promote our health and safety. And typically we do them willingly and without too much resistance. But what do we do to promote our safety and security in everyday life in terms of emergencies, in terms of disasters? See, emergency managers everywhere understand that disasters can happen anywhere at any time. And like snowflakes, no two disasters are ever the same, right? They're going to vary by time, duration, incident, landscape, geography, climate, and countless other factors. Yet virtually all incidents parallel one another in a very, very sobering way. They disproportionately impact individuals who have disabilities. And we saw that during the Loma Prieta earthquake. We saw it during Hurricane Katrina. We saw it in Superstorm Sandy. And we've seen it in every single disaster that has followed. In fact, during the Butte Valley fires, of 2015, which many of you will remember were the third and seventh, respectively, most horrific fires we've had in the state of California. During those fires, 5 of the first 6 reported fatalities were from individuals who had a disability or people with access and functional needs. And of the tens of thousands of people who evacuated those affected areas, an overwhelmingly high percentage of those who remained were individuals with disabilities. And so it is that, once again, this underrepresented population was impacted greater than people and individuals who don't have disabilities. So understanding this harsh reality, the way that disasters unfairly affect our communities, in 2008, the governor did something. It was unprecedented. He leaned forward and created the Office of Access and Functional Needs within his Office of Emergency Services. Now, the purpose of my office, it's really a twofold mission. Number one, it's to identify the needs of individuals with disabilities and access and functional needs, and we identify what they are before, during, and after disasters. And then we take it to the next step, and we take those needs and we integrate them. We integrate them within everything we do in our state. We integrate them within our emergency plans, our guidance documents, our lessons learned, anything and everything you can imagine, we make sure that they're integrated. But despite our best efforts, and I will say we're pretty good at what we do, but despite our best efforts, I always tell people, please don't think that in a disaster you can rely on government to save you. Please don't have that assumption. At least not right away, okay? Give us a while. We'll eventually show up. But you don't want to wait for that. And because that's the case, and because we have to be capable and ready to help ourselves during and immediately following a disaster, there are certain actions and certain things that we need to do in order to be ready. I call this personal preparedness. Now, I got to tell you, I didn't come up with that. You might have heard of personal preparedness. Let's just assume, you know what, let's just assume I did come up with it. Trademark, personal, but you can use it. So personal preparedness, as I'm going to address it, basically means preparing so nobody's going to come, right? It's a perspective that says local or state government will do everything possible to assist, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to do this on your own. And it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to think about. But the good news is we're not trying to crack the Da Vinci Code. All right? There's a lot of things we can do. And so I want to talk about that. And it's important, though, that we understand that the responsibility to promote our personal safety and security and health, it's not something that any one of us does alone. It's a shared responsibility, right? It falls on government as well as the individual, family members, medical providers, anyone in the support network. So what I would say is, as individuals, let's think about how we do this. So where do we begin? Well, I could tell a story about the knight who was riding into town. On his way in, he looked and saw that there was a bird on the side of the road, flying with its feet up in the air. And the knight was perplexed. And he asked, "Little bird, what are you doing? Why aren't you flying around with your friends? Having fun, singing songs, doing your bird thing." And the bird said, "Well, I heard that the sky was going to fall. So I'm going to catch it and hold it up." The knight thought, that is ridiculous. Little bird, your legs are weak and feeble. surely you cannot hold up the sky. And the bird stopped for a moment and thought, and looked back up at the night and said, you know, you're right, I am small. My legs are tiny, and some might even say feeble or weak. But we each do what we can. And so when we think about where do we begin by recognizing and accepting that we each do what we can. Right? That means we each do our part. So as individuals with disabilities, we have certain considerations we have to plan for that other people don't. And as individuals in the disability community, we have to answer some tough questions like, what am I going to do when a disaster strikes? What am I going to do when there's a fire or a flood or an earthquake and law enforcement officials tell me I have to evacuate my home? Because when that happens, things get real, and they get real very, very quickly. Think about that for a moment, because I use a power chair, right? Which means I can't just hop into any car or truck and evacuate. No, I need specialized transportation. A vehicle with a ramp or a lift, something that can accommodate me. Now, I might have other mobility devices or assistive technologies or durable medical equipment that I need to take with me, right? So the key here is proper planning. I need to ask myself, during an emergency, what would I need to get out safely? I've been to shelters before and talked with people who evacuated their homes so quick. Their neighbors literally came, picked them up out of their trucks, laid them in the back of the pickup truck. Sorry, picked them up out of the chair, put them in the back of a pickup truck, and drove away. And they watched, as they drove away, they watched their homes burn down with their wheelchairs inside. What do we need to take with us? How are we going to get out? I will say this, by the time you see smoke, or by the time the water starts to rise, it's too late to ask the question. So let's think about that. And I don't want you to be scared. I'm not trying to freak anybody out. I just need us to be on the same page that as uncomfortable as this is, we have to ask the question. When it comes to evacuation planning, I tell people to go 4 deep. So let me explain what that is by telling you what it means in my own life. All right, so when I say 4 people deep, person number 1 on my list, my wife, Casey. All right, she likes me, right? She's kind of fond of me. Considers me to be a keeper. So she's great because we're typically not far from each other. We have an accessible vehicle. She knows what I need. If I have to evacuate, she is number 1 on my list for people to go with. My mom's on my list too. She's a big fan, lives close, and understands what my evacuation needs are. I round out my top 4 with one of my neighbors and a friend from church. Each has driven me before. Each are responsible and each are responsive. The idea here is that at any given moment, I can't expect that all 4 of those people are going to be available and around to assist me, that they can drop everything they're doing and come get me. But I can probably assume that 1 of the 4 are going to be available, right? Especially if they know they're on my list. So go 4 people deep. Now, sometimes when we talk about evacuating, we have to remember it's not always pretty, right? And here's the part that's a bummer. It's not always pretty. So I I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, so the good is I have my own transportation, right? I'm with Casey, we're in the van. It's set up how I like it. I can count on it to be available when I need it. We're together and we're on the go, and that's great. The bad, I'm relying on someone who's maybe number 3 or 4 on my list. You know, I'm in a vehicle that maybe isn't as comfortable. I might have to leave my wheelchair behind, actually. But, you know, at least I'm with somebody I know. The ugly is I'm relying on somebody I don't know. Right? Law enforcement's going to run up on the door. They're going to toss me in the back of the, you know, whatever they're riding there. My chair's going to stay behind, and I'm going to be out the door. Now, what do they all have in common? Right? Under all 3 scenarios, I live. Okay? I'm alive to tell the tale. I'm there to complain about the bumpy ride or whatever it is. So we have to start approaching it with that perspective. This is about survival, right? It is about survival. I may not have my chair. I may not have my equipment, but we can get those things for you at a shelter, okay? We can replace items. We cannot replace individuals. So the priority under any scenario is simple. It's preservation of life. And once you've developed your evacuation plan, you need to consider another important question. Okay. As a part of your plan, what are you going to take? Have you guys heard about a go bag or a go kit? Okay, raise your hand if you've got a go bag. Nice. How many people are going to be okay in this room? All right, let's think about that. Of course, maybe you buddy up, right, depending on what's in their go bag. Could be enough snacks for 2 people. All right, look, think of your go bag as your lifeline. All right, it's the personal emergency bag you're going to grab when you got to just bolt. And you got to remember, these things are very immediate. So each member needs to have some supplies, right? You want food, you want water, you want snacks. We have things like playing cards in ours, right? Because guess what? Shelters can be kind of boring. So we're going to play games. And then you've got things like battery chargers and flashlights, and depending on if you think maybe you're going to be outdoors for a while, right? Pocket knife or lighters or things like that, right? Because you're never quite sure what the exact scenario is going to be. But you want enough that you can be on your own for a couple days if needed. But here's what's interesting. As tends to be the case, individuals with disabilities or access or functional needs have to have additional considerations, right? Which means my bag is a little bit different than maybe most people's bag that I talk to, which is I have to have prescription medications in mine, right? I've got some first aid supplies. Mine has a list of my doctors. It's got a list of medically relevant contact phone numbers. It lists things like if I'm allergic to medicine, copy of my health insurance cards. And of course, I've got some durable medical equipment that I've got nearby too. Please don't forget your medication. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a shelter and I've heard somebody say, I need my heart medicine, right? If I don't take it every day, I could die. And they go, okay, what do you take? Oh, I take a red pill and I take a blue pill. Like, okay, can you be more specific? Yeah, well, the red pill is round and the blue pill is triangle. Okay, this is a problem. Who's your doctor? I don't know. Right? My family member takes me to all my appointments. I don't know the address, I don't know the contact info. Okay. We run into this time and time and time and time again. So don't let that be you. Once you've got a plan, right? So you know you're gonna go 4 people deep, right? You know you're gonna have a go bag. You thought about what you need, and you've got a plan to get out. Once you've got a plan, exercise it, right? Forgive me for using a photo of myself up there. I know that seems vain. Exercise every plan you have. You know, we've got a plan for what to do if there's a fire in the house. And it's funny because, you know, everybody's got a list, right? Things they're supposed to do. Kids know they come down, which door we're going to exit. If there's a fire on the other side, we go out the back door. We have a meet-up spots in front of the neighbor's house. And I thought, okay, we got to exercise this plan. So I said, everybody go to their room, and I'm going to yell fire, and you're going to go. So they did. And I yelled fire, and it's amazing. Girls got up, picked up their bags. They each of them picked up, we've got 2 dogs. They each picked up 1 dog. My wife picked up some durable medical equipment. Boom, out the door to the neighbor's mailbox. There's one problem. You guys think what the problem is?
They left you.
Yeah, I was still in the house. Right, so I'm hanging in the bedroom. I was like, man, how long are they gonna be out there for, right? 5 or so minutes pass, they come back in. They're high-fiving each other. Oh, way to go, that was awesome. It's like, yeah, except I'm toast, man. Like, what the heck was that, right? And then my girls did what kids do. They turned on each other. You were supposed to get him. No, you were supposed to get him. We exercised the plan, and in doing so, we learned. We have to be very specific. Everybody needs to check on daddy before you go out the door. So hopefully, if we ever have to execute that plan, I'll be okay. Here's the thing about preparedness, is it's easy to get overwhelmed in thinking about everything that could go wrong. Right? What type of disaster, what the event might be. When it comes to preparedness, it goes across the board. If you're prepared for one disaster, you're typically well prepared for multiple disasters. So it's just as important, you know, for what you do in a fire as it is an earthquake or potentially even a flood. So try not to think about all the things that can go wrong. Instead, just think about the consequence, right? I've got to leave my house. I've got to be on my own. What does that mean? And, you know, so it is that as members of this great community, it does fall on us to be part and to do our part on the preparedness front. We have to plan and exercise our way through the complex emergency landscape. It's the only way we're going to make it. And as we do so, we become a safer, more resilient, better prepared community. Emergency management's a shared, like I said, responsibility. We leverage existing support networks for preparedness. How many people here are health providers? How many people here are in some other support network for an individual with a disability? Educator, mentor, family member, okay? And then we've got individuals here who have actual disabilities. So it's for all of us to figure what we can do. Now, we've talked about what individuals can do. We've talked a bit about the role that families can play. But what about the role of our medical partners? Right? What role do you play? We go to our doctors for care. We go to our doctors for instruction, direction, guidance. And we hope, trust, and expect will make us feel better. Will make us stronger, will make us well. But if all that our medical providers are doing is writing prescriptions or lab orders, then their efforts, as sincere as they are, as well-intentioned as they are, will fall short of what we truly need to maintain our health and our well-being. To all those who provide medical care, I would say, and I would implore you really, talk to your patients. Talk to your consumers, talk to your stakeholders a little bit about their emergency management plans. Talk to them about preparedness, about an evacuation plan, about making sure that they've got enough medicine or an emergency script to last them when needed. I think about, the role that medical professionals play in our lives. So I've got 2 kids. Isabel's 12, going on 30. Sammy just turned 10. I was telling Robin, this kid's cocky now. She's got a thing because she's double digits, so it's like the big kid on campus, right? When Sammy was born, that was crazy. Sammy was born, we were living in DC. My wife was a week past her due date, which meant things in the Taylor household were a little stressful. Okay, it was hot, it was humid. She goes into labor and she says, I just want to wait and be sure. Because with Isabel, we'd gone a little too early. And we did that thing where you wait like 24 hours to have a baby. Not fun. But all I knew at that point was like what I had seen on the Cosby Show. It usually took him about 20 minutes to deliver a baby. It takes longer, it turns out. So with Sammy, we wanted to be sure. So my wife waits till the contractions are 5 minutes apart. And she says, okay, let's go. I get in the van. She gets in the van. My friend Aaron, who had agreed to drive us, gets in the van. It's a 45-minute drive to the hospital, which, okay. But there was something we didn't consider. It was Wednesday at 8 in the morning. We lived in DC. What do you think traffic looked like at 8 in the morning? Yeah, it's like a parking lot, right? So we're stuck, and about 20 minutes in, my wife turns and says, I'm going to have this baby in the car. And I flipped out. I was like, I don't want to be that dude. I don't want to be that guy. Right? The guy that we all see on the news who's like, well, I was a Boy Scout. My training kicked in. I delivered the baby. Okay, let me tell you what. I'm a Boy Scout. I earned an Eagle Scout. I am not trained to deliver babies. So I thought, I don't want to be that guy. We got to figure this out. And I looked over and I saw that there was a highway patrolman. I was like, all right. So I told my buddy Aaron, you pull up next to that guy and you roll down the window and you let me do the talking. And I said, help, my wife's having a baby and I gotta go. And the guy said, what do you need? I said, turn on your lights and give us a police escort. And he looks and says, yeah, we don't do that. And he rolled his window back up. And we're all, and our hearts sank. And I don't know if it's that he could just sense the desperation and he maybe felt bad or maybe thought we had been kidding. and realized we weren't, but he changed his mind. And he rolled his window down, and he said, look, I'm going to turn on the lights, stay on my bumper, just follow me. And next thing I know, we're bombing our way through traffic, which, as a side note, let me tell you, if you ever get the opportunity to get a police escort and bomb your way through traffic, do it. It's amazing. I told my wife, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's amazing. She did not seem to appreciate it as much at the time as I did, but we got to the hospital. 15 minutes later, Sammy was born. Got it close. And I think about that story, how grateful I am that we found the right person at the right time in that exact moment of our lives. And it's really hard for me to think about the tale I would tell if that individual hadn't been there. And so, I think about your role as medical professionals, right? Support network providers, family members. And I just can't help but think that that's you. You have this opportunity to be the right person at the right time in the lives of somebody when they're going to need it the most. And so we have to think of ourselves in that way. We have to view what we do through that lens. And in so doing, we need to move the needle on emergency management. People we care about. Look, in summary, let me say this. My office exists to ensure that when it comes to state government and local government, when it comes to operations and logistics and planning and response and recovery, that access and functional needs, that disabilities needs are included in what we do. All right, but ultimately, while I can include something in the plan, you're the ones who actually do the integration. You are where the proverbial rubber meets the road, so to speak. And so, know that I will encourage you, and everybody can have my contact info, and I will support you, and I'll provide you whatever I can. But ultimately, you're the ones that make this successful. And so in that sense, I literally cannot fulfill my mission, the mission of my office, without you. It just says that together we achieve great things. And I really believe that. I went to BYU, it was 14 hours from home. I didn't know anybody when I got there. I hired care attendants for the first time. It was a challenge. What I found was that in California, I had this great network. I had doctors who cared about me, not just as a patient, but as a person. My mom was there, friends, family, school administrators, all down the line. And I got to BYU, and from time to time, I felt a little bit alone. It took me a while to build that up again. So part of what we have to teach as well is we have to teach ourselves, we have to learn for ourselves, and we have to teach individuals who we care so much for how to advocate, right? How to build up their networks. I remember it's coming back, I tell this story differently depending on if my wife's in the room or not. Now, my wife is not in the room, so I'll tell you the true story. I was coming back from a date, and when my wife's here, I'm like, I was coming back from a study group. I was coming back from a date. We had gone and seen a midnight show. We were both broke, so we didn't have transportation right, so I walked her to her dorm, and then I went across campus to my dorm. And on my way, I came across this piece of, in the sidewalk, cement there that had been dug up. And I think what it was probably during the day they dug up a pipe, and they filled it with dirt, but they hadn't paved over the top yet. I remember looking at it and thinking, I wonder if that dirt's going to support the weight of my chair. And I looked, and there was a successful path that was around the side. And I thought, oh, well, that's easy. But for whatever reason, I thought, damn, that's like a whole 8 seconds out of my way. I better just do this. And I was a little nervous. I got up right to the edge. My tires were like halfway on the sidewalk, halfway on dirt. And this little voice inside of me must have sensed that I was going to back out. And the voice said, don't be a chicken. Go for it. I was like, okay, I'll go for it. Have you guys ever seen America's Funniest Home Videos? Yeah, so if somebody had a camera, I'd be $10,000 richer right now. I went forward, and I entered that dirt, and I sunk like a brick. And I tried to back up, and I dug myself deeper. I tried to go forward, and I dug myself deeper. And then I came to the realization, this wheelchair does not have four-wheel drive. So there I am, stuck in what wasn't actually just dirt, it was actually mud because it had rained. And, you know, I'm an emergency manager at heart, so I assess the situation. I'm alone. It's after midnight, dark, in a secluded part of campus, and I have no cell phone. It's going to be a long night, right? So I thought, here's my plan. I will go to sleep, and I'll wake up in the morning, probably have some awkward questions to answer to whoever finds me, but they'll help me out. And so I was getting ready to put my head down, and I heard this cart engine turn over. And I looked over, and this guy had gotten in a truck. And I realized he was probably the last member of a cleaning crew that was wrapping up the midnight shift. And I thought, well, I'm saved. And as he pulled out of the parking lot, I started yelling for him, hey, hey, hey. And the guy saw me, and he rolled down his window, and he put his arm out. He went, hey, and then took off. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like I would be that excited to say hello to somebody at midnight on a weekend, but I looked for that dude all over campus. I was going to run him over. He took off, and all hope is lost. And so I was, okay, well, I'm going to go to sleep. And I went to put my head down again and close my eyes. And right before I did, off in the distance, I saw there was this couple out for a midnight stroll. I was like, thank goodness for young love. So I called out, hey, 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 and they waved. Hey, kept going. I was like, not this time. Help, I need help. And I called out for help, and they heard and they came. Now, as they got closer, I began to realize Lady Luck was back on my side. Because every single step this guy took, he got bigger and bigger and bigger. And no joke, turns out this guy was a 6'4" German exchange student named Klaus. And Klaus spoke like the Terminator. I do a terrible Terminator impersonation, but we're all buddies, so here goes. Klaus looks down at me and says, "What seems to be the problem?" I was like, "I'm stuck." And he looks and says, "I will get you out." I was like, "Okay." He grabs onto the back of my chair. And I'm about to say, "Hey, Klaus, this chair is super, super heavy. So, be careful. Plus, I'm pretty buff, so that adds a little bit of weight, right? So don't hurt your back." Before I can get anything out, Klaus grabs hold, pulls up, lifts me out like I was light as a feather. Like this dude had been in the wheelchair lifting training Olympics and first place every time. And he gets me out, and it was so fast, I was stunned. And I looked up, saw Klaus, and I looked at his girlfriend. His girlfriend was like 5 feet tall and couldn't be any prouder. I looked at her, and she was like, "That's my man." I was like, "Okay." And Klaus looks at me and says, "You are free now." I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You can go." I'm like, "Okay." So I took off, right? But I think about the story. It's so interesting because it's sort of this metaphor for life, right? That sometimes, look, we hear about things like personal preparedness and go bags and evacuation plans, and we think, yeah, okay, whatever. And we don't plan, we don't prepare, and guess what? Emergency comes, we find ourselves stuck in the mud, right? In that sense, we kind of drive ourselves in the mud. Now, other times, we do everything we should. We plan, we prepare, we go 4 people deep. And a disaster strikes, and circumstances go beyond our control. And we find that life pushes us into the mud pit, if you will. And in each instance, there we are, shoulder to shoulder, stuck, waiting for Klaus to come save the day. When you get to be Klaus, and that's your duty. That's your role, that's your responsibility. You get to be Klaus for somebody. You get to grab a hold on the back of that chair, say, "I will get you out. You are free now, go." And it's a wonderful thing. I firmly believe that it's the most human thing we do, is to help lift the hands that hang, to help empower, to lift others. And I firmly believe that it's when we stop to lift another that truly we just elevate ourselves. And it's a special thing. I'll tell you one more quick story and then we'll turn it over for questions. But, in my life, I've been told at various times that certain things would be impossible for me. Right? I told you the doctor had said that high school, college, family, all that would be impossible for me. And I heard things like that kind of throughout. It would be impossible for me to be a successful father because I wouldn't be able to throw my kids up in the air. Well, it's worked out pretty good. I've heard a lot of these things, but I always think back to this experience I had, and it was in college as well. Now, being from California, I thought I knew what a mountain was. You get out to Utah, like, whoa, my gosh, that's a mountain, right? And at BYU, they've got this symbol. It's just the letter Y. They put on T-shirts and footballs, and that's just like the Y, right? So it's not the YMCA, but it's the BYU. And they've got this Y that's like 350 feet long, and it's on the side of a mountain. You can see it from a plane. And there's this tradition every year, the students hike the Y. And even in homecoming, the alumni come back. Now there's two paths, right? There's one that goes straight up, that's what the students take. And then there's a series of 12 switchbacks. That's what the alumni take. But either way, they all hike it. And as much as I wanted to be a part of all the university traditions, Mother Nature didn't exactly integrate access and functional needs with me in mind when she made mountains. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. One day I mentioned that to my friend John. I didn't think much about it. About a month or so later, he comes into my room. He's like, "Hey, Vance." Well, he didn't call me Vance. He called me V because I was very cool in college. And it's like, "Hey, V." Like, "What up, Jade?" John says, "Hey, get your care attendants to dress you in really warm clothing on Saturday. Just get really rugged up and be in your manual chair. I'm going to pick you up at 10 a.m. I was like, I'm suspicious, but I'll do it. That was my birthday on Saturday, right? So I kind of thought something was up. I didn't know what. Saturday rolls around, I'm all rugged up. In my manual chair, boom, John shows up. We're in the dorm, go down the lobby. There are over 20 of my friends in the lobby. And they say, "Hey, Vance, for your birthday, we're going to hike the Y." I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "We're going to lift you in that wheelchair up to the Y." And I was like, I don't know why this was my first thought. I was like, this chair doesn't have a seatbelt. And they're like, "No problem." So they went up, they came down with all these old neckties, and they strapped me into the chair. I was like, pretty sure that's not ADA compliant. But whatever. So we drove to the bottom of the mountain. And just like clouds, the closer we got, the bigger and bigger it got. And I'm there, and it looks like you're going to basically scale up a sheer wall, you know. And what they did is they carried me what I call Pharaoh style. So we had two guys in front, two on the side, two in the back. And they went, 1, 2, 3, lift, and then they picked me up. Just like in the movies, you know, the way they carry the Pharaoh. As a side note, let me just say, if you ever have the chance to be carried Pharaoh style, do it. It's the best. There's frankly no other way to go, really. Once you've gone Pharaoh style, you don't ever want to go back. I get why they did that. So the plan was, there were 12 switchbacks. They would go, and at the end of each one, they would set me down, and then 6 fresh arms would come in. 6 fresh guys would come in and pick me up. Well, that worked for like the first 3 switchbacks. And then they're like, "Hey, let's stop every half switchback." Then it was like, "Well, take 3 steps, stop, and then we'll switch up." And people were like coming down from hiking the Y. You can only imagine how shocked they were to see us. "What are you doing?" And we were like, "How much further is it?" And they were, no matter what they said, it was too far, right? But not once was there a complaint. We were singing and laughing and joking. Some of my friends bought dates. Just like, I'm glad I could help you with your love life, right? Then they felt bad because they wimped out and got tired, and their dates saw that they were wimpy. No, they didn't do that. But at a time when we think people are selfish and looking out for number one, you know, this group of what turned out to be over 20 people, this youth gave up their entire Saturdays so they could carry me up a mountain. And eventually we got to the base of the Y. And it's hard for me to describe how beautiful that view was. Right? Like I thought I would know what it was like. It's beyond my imagination. And the guys went off to the side and they kind of huddled up, and then they came back and they said, hey man, we didn't come this far so you can be at the base of the Y. We're taking you to the top. And with one more lift, 1, 2, 3, go, up I went, and defying all logic and the laws of gravity, they heaved and hoed and pulled me all the way up to the top. And this time we did have a cell phone. And I called my mom. I remember saying, you'll never guess where I am. And all my friends started singing happy birthday in the background. And next thing I knew, we were all just crying. And it was like each one of my birthday wishes had come true all at the same time. And I think about that because on that day, we did the impossible. I would be shocked if anybody had ever done that before. I'd be shocked if anybody had done it since. On that day, we did something that was impossible. Together, we did great things. And so, whether you've been told, hey, this is impossible for you, or whether someone has said that to a loved one or somebody that you have some responsibility for, please remember that when we come together as individuals with disabilities, as people who provide medical support, familial support, care attendants, people at the Mind Institute and other mentors and service providers, when we all come together with this shared responsibility and each do our part, great things happen. And in this case, that translates into a safer, more secure, healthier life for ourselves and the people that we love. That's a good thing. This is a good day because today we get to be the right people at the right time for the people who matter in our lives. So thank you. Thank you for letting me be here with you. Thank you for what you're doing. And just thank you for today.
In addition to a go bag, is there a way to learn the formal emergency plan for Sacramento, California?
Absolutely. So those emergency plans
Good question.
are public documents. And here's the great thing. So when I'm talking with counties, I tell them that as you're putting your plans together, you need to be engaging the community, right? So in the disability community, we of course have the saying, nothing for us without us, right? And essentially what that means is we want to have a spot at the table. And having that spot at the table ensures that our voices are heard, but also that the value of our perspectives can go into the development of that plan. So that when the plan is developed, not only is it inclusive of our needs, but we understand what it is. We know what the role and limitations of government is. We know what our own responsibilities are going to be. We can buy into it, and we can share that with others. Now, if the plan is developed in such a way, right, that you're going to go right now and you're going to take a look, and it's in such a way that you don't think it's inclusive of your needs, then you are absolutely, absolutely welcome and encouraged to talk to the emergency management community in the county. And just let them know, because they are constantly going through and updating these plans, right? We've done a lot of really neat things statewide in terms of integration, But the reality is that we're never going to hang that mission accomplished banner, right? We're never going to say, well, we're done. We can always get better. Starting in January, up through April, we had 4 presidentially declared disasters. 4. Okay? Of course, we had Orville, right? Which we got a phone call today in an hour. There's going to be a failure of the emergency spillway. 30 feet of water are going to pour down through the downstream communities. Now, we're in fire season. We've already had 3 major fires. We've got over 20 fires burning right now, and we're expected to have a week of triple-digit heat. So essentially, I'm just waiting for locusts at this point. But all this to say, our emergency management dynamic is such that it's constantly changing. Look up those plans. And if you need help tracking it down, email me. I'm more than happy to find any plan you're looking for. Read over it and get in contact with folks to make sure that they know either, hey, great job, or hey, there's a thing or two you should look at. I'm sure they would appreciate that feedback.
Okay, so, do you have any suggestions on apps to use for emergency planning which can be shared with family and friends, or any services for planning and sharing of plans?
Sure. So there is if you go to ready.gov,
Ready.gov?
They've got an app, and they've also got a bunch of downloadables, and they're like templates, right? So you can just fill in name, items, that sort of thing. Also, if you look at our website, so if you go to the Cal OES website, and there's a section on there for the Office of Access and Functional Needs, we call it an AFN library, right? And what happened was, I'd go places and people would say, hey, Vance, I saw this great guidance about evacuation from high rises. Do you have it? I was like, well, I don't know which one, right? And so people were having to go to Google to try and find these different reports and studies. But what we did is we just started finding all the great ones we could. And every time a new one comes out, we grab that too, and then we put all of them into our Access and Functional Needs library. And so it becomes this one-stop shop for all the great resources that are out there. So we've got some stuff in there as well. It's a great question.
Okay, so then there was just one comment from someone to suggest that maybe add toothbrush to the Go Kit.
Absolutely. That's good. See, that's how you know
People
I've
are
got
paying
girls.
attention.
I've got girls because they for sure will have toothbrushes. If I had boys, they'd be like, we're cool. That's right. It's interesting because we think about these little things, right? It's kind of quote unquote little things. They really do make a big difference. So one of the things that we saw, and we continue to see in these disasters, but it really came to a head during the Butte Valley fires. You guys remember the Butte Valley fires?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was just a couple years ago. I had been on the job for just a couple weeks. And they're like, welcome to California, right? I get this call at the Emergency Operations Center. They called me in the morning. I was on my way, it was a Sunday, right? It never happens on like a weekday.
No,
during
never.
office hours. I was getting ready for church. I had my tie on, and the phone rang, and I can get in here. I was like, well, that's not good. And I show up. 20 minutes later, I'm being briefed on the fires. And then just a couple hours after that, I'm driving into the valley. I don't know how many of you guys have been into the, into Lake County, but you go up this super windy road, and like right when you think you're about to throw up, it opens up into this beautiful valley. Except it was not beautiful on that day. On that day, it was pretty horrific. It looked like a bomb had gone off. It was really eerie because it was sunny until you got into the valley. And the ash was so thick that it literally darkened out the sun. And I'm going in, and I'm seeing cars going the other way, and I'm like, what am I doing? But I showed up at the shelter, and what was missing? Accessible showers. And you think, well, so what, right? I mean, hey, we're talking about survival here, and we're talking about living. What's the problem with the shower? Let me tell you. It was hot, and it was muggy. And what I learned is that when you sweat, ash sticks to sweat, and it forms a grime that you can literally wipe away. And because I was new, I expected, well, hey, it's California, right? We've got 40 million people. We've probably got everything. How many accessible showers do we have immediately available to us? Take a guess. Who said 100? Someone said 100? How many? Somebody else said something? How many? You said 0? That's a little more than 0.
5.
But not much.
5.
They said 5. It's like, Vance, we have 5 showers. And I thought that they meant 500. And so I was like, this is great, man. Everybody gets a shower. I was like the Oprah Winfrey of showers, right? Like, you get a shower, you get a shower. Like, no, like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they were all being utilized at a concert in Southern California. So I said, that's not gonna work. And so we I mean, come on, nobody showers at Burning Man anyway. So we commandeered them. And I probably shouldn't say this with the camera rolling, but as a side note, if you ever get the chance to commandeer something, do it. It's the best, right? I was like, it goes to your head. I got home, I was like, I commandeer the remote, and I commandeer the salt shaker. And my kids were like, ugh. So we commandeer them, and we get them identified and deployed, or procured and deployed and set up. And it took 4 days, which for state government is like breakneck speed, right? It's like amazing. And my colleague, I thanked him. He had put in a particularly immense effort on it, and he says, hey, no problem, just doing my job. I was like, I appreciate that you're not seeing this as outside the scope of your duties. I don't think you're understanding the significance here. So I was like, let me tell you what I saw at the shelter, and I talked to him about the people who had evacuated without their chairs. I talked to him about how hot and sweaty it was, and how people, because they had a disability, had to watch as their non-disabled counterparts hopped in and out of the showers to refresh themselves. And how the individuals who couldn't fit in and needed the accessible showers had to sit in their filth for 4 days. And I said, what do you think it felt like the moment they got into that shower and had the very first droplet of water hit their body? What was that like? How refreshing, how rejuvenating must that have felt? People told me afterwards, I felt like I had hope again. Like I was me. And I told myself I could get through this. That's what it did for people. And so I told them, no, you weren't just doing your job, right? You were integrating access and functional needs, and in doing that, your job has probably never held as much meaning or significance or value for the people that you serve. So yeah, you know, you say underwear and toothbrush and we laugh, but it's 100% true. It's 100% true. So think about those things. What are the comfort items? My go bag has Skittles, right? Why? Because I get down on Skittles, right? That's my midnight thing. Don't judge me. I'm just here to tell you the truth. So comfort items are good.
And then brush your teeth.
Yes, that's why I need the toothbrush, right?
All right.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Another comment there?
Yeah, I'd like to add another comment. Because we're talking about medical personnel.
Yep.
In a contained disaster, it's not such an issue. If it's an earthquake, if it involves everybody, then I feel it's then we're there to help. But we don't know how our people are. And so be patient with us because we're really in our wits' end.
Yeah, the thing that we have to recognize, right? So we talk about whole community, right? Whole community planning. And it really, can I tell you guys just another quick story about my kids? I promise it'll make sense. Just stick with it. My kids wanted to learn to bake. Right? My wife makes awesome treats. I was super skinny when we got married. So they wanted to make brownies. And my wife put all the ingredients on the counter. And the kids looked and they saw, you know, butter and flour and sugar and eggs. And they were like, yeah, I've had a lot of brownies. Like, I don't get it. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And my wife was like, trust me, you put them all together and it works. And she gave them the directions and the recipe, and they kind of went at it themselves. And, you know, they're kids, right? So sugar, salt, I mean, it's both white, whatever. One egg, well, it's cool to crack eggs, so like we put 3, right? And on and on and on. And they baked it, and it came out, and it looked super gross, right? So I'm dad, and I'm supposed to like be the guy to take a bite. Good try, right? No, I could not live up to my duty. It looked gross. I was like, hey, Sammy, why don't you take a bite and tell me what you think? She spit it out. So I was like, all right, let's huddle up. What if this time you try it and you put every ingredient in exactly as directed? And they did. And they baked it up. And it came out awesome. I was more than happy to test it several times. But that's how I see, right, to your point, that, you know, I look around and you can see it in this room. Different individuals, different walks of life, different roles, different responsibilities. We all have a shared mission. That mission cannot be successful unless each of us come together in the right form and fashion to bake up something yummy. In a shelter environment, you will see all kinds of people fulfilling all kinds of roles. It is when each of them is at their best and working together that shelter will be successful and we'll have a good outcome. So thank you for pointing that out. I told you that story would make sense.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was created in 1998 with a promise to find cures for neurodevelopmental disorders. Every day, our physicians and researchers come closer to fulfilling that promise. Their groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other brain disorders are helping children achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.